Hello, everybody. This is Brian Ankney with Auto Success Magazine. I'd like to thank you for taking the time to join us today for our webinar. Today, we're going to talk about from online to frontline, aligning your recon management with your marketing strategy. Now, before we get started, and I hand over the reins to our, I know I said this the last time I had him on, but I can't get over it. We've got two guests today. Their both name is Anthony. And so we've got a pair of aces. So anyway, a couple things I'd like to go over. If you haven't yet joined Auto Success Webinars, it's a group on Facebook. You just go to Facebook and in the search, you type Auto Success Webinars. It'll come up and you request to join the group. Now, what do you get out of the group? Well, first, you'll never miss a webinar. Second, you can request topics or guests you'd like to see in the future. But thirdly, and most importantly, you can interact with each other, because nothing we're going to talk about today is really easily done or flip a switch and it's on. It's something that you have to work at. And so I invite you guys to share with each other your successes and failures, as you implement the new ideas that we're going to share with you today. Now, if you haven't yet been to the Auto Success website lately, it's autosuccessonline.com. We have a new website. We have a new newsletter. If you're not aware, we were acquired by Babcock's Media on April 1st of 2017, and just about everything Auto Success does digitally is light years beyond what you've been accustomed to. We've got a lot of super cool new stuff. So please go check it out. Sign up for the newsletter. And now the questions for this webinar, the way we're going to handle questions is the same that we've handled in the past on most of our webinars. We're going to hold them until the end. But with that being said, I would invite you to type them in as we go. And the reason for that is, one, it'll help me with context as to what we were talking about in the webinar when you ask that question. And then also, when we get to the end of the webinar, so everybody's not rushing to type, I've got a couple of questions to jump right into. Now, with that, I would like to turn the reins of this webinar over to the pair of aces, Anthony and Anthony. Please, introduce yourselves, tell us a little bit about yourself, and then take it away.
Well, good morning, Brian. This is Anthony G, or Anthony Greenalch, and I've got Anthony Martinez. We'll be speaking on. Anthony, you're on too, right?
Yes.
Great. So yeah, thanks for having us today. The purpose of this webinar is to kind of help people align their recon management with their marketing strategy. And the concept behind it is has a lot to do with what Del Pollock has been doing with velocity selling and getting that e-commerce marketing up front right out of the gate. But then what happens to reconditioning if you are 10 or 12 days time to line, even 7 days time to line, and your e-commerce stuff hits the web 24 hours after the car arrived? Well, now you're scrambling to sell cars that are in production, and what do we do with all that, and how can we actually get that reconditioning time down? And that's really where Rapid Recon comes in. The concept behind this webinar isn't necessarily to sell you Rapid Recon, but hopefully give you some tools outside of Rapid Recon that could help you in your reconditioning process, and at the same time also introduce you to some tools that are inside Rapid Recon as well. But we'll go ahead and get started here in just a minute. To give you some background on me, I have 24 years experience in a store, and I've been with Rapid Recon now coming up on 2 years. All of my experience has been in fixed, but I've dealt a lot with variable. So have a lot of experience on both ends of that. And then Anthony, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself as well?
Hi, Anthony Martinez. I recently was the reconditioning director for the Greenway Auto Group in Central Florida. And before that, I have a background in quality control, Lean and Six Sigma. Worked for quality control manufacturers and cabinetry, home construction, and prior to that I was in the military. And so now I am joining Anthony in this webinar.
All right, guys, well, we'll go ahead and jump in. And as you have questions, like Brian said, go ahead and type those in and get those in the queue, and then we'll get those answered for you a little bit later. If there's something we can't answer, we'll certainly still address it for you. We'll just take a note. We may have to get back to you. So, all right, let me flip slides here, and you should see a slide change. There we go. So getting online before frontline. Del Pollock said it best when he said, in most cases, the results show the average front-end gross profit declines by at least 50% once vehicles cross that 30-day mark. Strong statement. Top performing dealers have their vehicles e-commerce marketing up in less than 24 hours. It's no secret that selling days are key. Every day a vehicle is not available for sale, it's costing the dealership big money. In addition to the gross profit erosion mentioned here by Dale, there's also a daily holding cost calculation that's stacked up on top of that. So it can really start to erode pretty quick. Getting online before frontline. Let's see my screen flip. There we go. All right. So we recently did a survey, reached out to dealers and said, well, how many of you actually take your photos before before the vehicle actually sees a wrench? How many of you detail the car before the vehicle sees a wrench? And we were pretty surprised to see that, less than 5% of dealers actually completely detail their vehicles and photograph them before they even see a wrench or any cosmetic reconditioning. Detail and photos after reconditioning, 53%. So that's the majority of the industry. And I think we've seen that trend for years. People are now trending into that, initial photos before, let's get that SEO up and get the photo count up, and then do a full photos after reconditioning. And that seems to be effective as well. And then surprisingly, 25% of the people said their photos are not part of the reconditioning process. Wow. That was a little mind-blowing, right? Because you'd think, reconditioning starts at what? It really starts at the appraisal. So for people to say that, well, photos are not part of my reconditioning process, and we let the vehicle get all the way to the front line before we have an outside vendor or a photographer actually go and shoot that was a little shocking. So,
wow.
All right. Let's see. So speeding up your marketing process. So I put together a few things that we see in the industry for the dealers that are doing really well with this, and thought I'd roll some of these out to you and share some of them. They have a separate initial process for purchases versus trades. So they treat their trades different and their purchases different as they come in, so they can get them aligned for the e-commerce marketing. They have a dedicated, consistent spot for taking photos, just so things are the same all the time. It's gonna tighten up that process for the people that are having to deal with it. The photographer that should be part of the process. Some dealers will outsource their photos. Some of the struggles we see with outsourcing is that the photographer is not available when you need them. Dealers sell far more vehicles from online activity than they do from in-store activity. The marketing priority should be the same: e-commerce first, frontline second. And then you should have a marketing process as strong as your service process. Almost every dealer I've seen has a consistent multi-point inspection process for pre-owned vehicles, stuff to check when you're going through the reconditioning process. You should have that same expectation from your marketing team. Have that same process. Shouldn't just be reserved for, for mechanical repair. Flip slide here. So we're going to jump into really aligning your recon management with your marketing strategy. And this is where we get into some of the things that are going to start saving you some time in your recon process, because of the dangers of getting that e-commerce marketing out there so early and then running your recon long, like I mentioned earlier. All right, Anthony, I'll turn this over to you here.
Defining measurable industry standards. Current holding costs are $37 per day for non-luxury, and luxury brands can run upwards to $50 a day. Holding costs are figured as the fixed cost of used car department divided by the number of cars. ADR, that's the average days in recon. It's the average days in reconditioning the vehicle is spent in the actual process of reconditioning, as opposed to time to market and time to line. Time to market is the time from acquisition to e-commerce marketing, which many stores will perform before the vehicle makes it to the actual mechanical part of reconditioning. And time to line is the time from acquisition to frontline arrival. We still see stores that will hold off on their minor cosmetic reconditioning until it's frontline ready because it's convenient for the vendor.
Sorry, guys, I muted myself to grab some water, and when I came back, I didn't realize that I was muted. Before I flip the slide, one thing I really want to emphasize here is the difference between time to market and time to line. Because prior to, maybe a couple years ago, or even as early as the last year, time to market was when the vehicle arrived to the front line, and that's when we went to market. But with the velocity type selling processes, that's actually changed quite a bit. Time to market, like Anthony said, is when your e-commerce stuff is up. That's really when you've gone to market, when you have your photos up and your descriptions. And now that new metric, time to line, has really replaced what we used to think of as time to market, from acquisition to frontline ready. But wanted to throw in a quick example of the impact of reconditioning and what this costs to keep these vehicles in the reconditioning process. Those of you that have joined us for webinars before, I'm sure have seen this, so this might be a little bit repetitive, but it's a common exercise that we bring up, really because it's so important. It's so important. NCM states that the average dealer spends $37 a day keeping a vehicle in stock, and the current time to market average for dealers that are involved in that group are 12.5 days, and the expected time is 5. So you got a 7.5 day spread, and the average dealer has 150 vehicles in stock. Well, you do the math on that, it's 41 grand a month, and do it over the course of the year, it's just shy of $500,000. So it's a ton of money letting these vehicles sit in reconditioning. Not to mention gross profit erosion if you've got those vehicles not only sitting in reconditioning for 12 days, but if you're burning up half of your selling days, you've only got another 12 days left to sell that car before your gross profit's going to tank, and you're going to be making 50% on what you expect it to. So, all right, that just flipped up. Anthony, I think that's yours.
This is back to what he was talking about on the differences between time to line and time to market. So on the arrow here, you can see different benchmarks or points along the process of reconditioning, pretty generalized from most dealerships. So the entire line itself, the whole arrow, that's going to be your time to line from the point of acquisition until front line ready. And then you can see in the bracket on the top in the middle, the average days in recon, usually from some point of cleaning or detail all the way through frontline ready. So that is the actual point where your reconditioning department has permission to work on the car and has the keys and has the vehicle, actual hands-on, the part of the timeline that you want to hold your reconditioning process accountable for. And then as you see there, time to market is right around the photos time. So in the past, that time to market was around the same time as the timeline, the whole arrow. And now dealers are front loading those photos, getting that market availability much faster. So we've seen that the time to market has gone from right to left.
All right, we'll do a slide flip here. All right, so dealers that are coming on with Rapid Recon, we see quite a few trends here. The highest that we've seen have been 22 days, we call average days in reconditioning. The average starts right around 10, and that is not a time to line metric, it is an average days in reconditioning metric. And then after about 5 months or so, they'll settle in around the 5-day mark. We do have some very high performing dealers that are performing under that 3-day threshold, and they're doing quite well with the reconditioning process.
So let's talk about return on investment and some key benefits. When your time to line decreases, your gross increases as a result of expense reduction, time savings. So time is actually money here. It's no secret that when vehicles sold in their first 30 days of acquisition hold higher gross margins. Increased inventory turn. Dealers are doing more with fewer vehicles. If you're wholesaling less, you're retailing more. Cutting 2.5 days out of your recon process can earn you a full inventory turn. Knowing where your cars are and what's going on cuts and eliminates waste, since you're not running all over the place looking for them. Now you can measure what you manage. Belief without evidence is not for the workplace. Be able to track it real time. Empower personal responsibility throughout your process. Avoid preaching to the congregation that we simply need to get better. You need to know who, why, how much, and by when. The future of reconditioning. So this is where we're seeing a lot of our customers moving towards, is the reconditioning center. You want to have an isolated recon bubble, dedicated department, preferably with a dedicated manager, writers, technicians, parts countermen, detailers. And if you don't have the resources for that, at least have a dedicated process that you can protect so that it's not up to them on what work to work on next, but it's part of a protocol. Dedicate the staff to handle only internal work. Find a technician that can also be a mechanic and fix something that your master tech would normally replace. Ask your parts counterman to shop for parts instead of just rolling out. Have several options, and we'll get into examples of that later. But if you have a protected reconditioning process or bubble, then you can improve on it, hold it against standards and metrics, and actually become more efficient in that one task rather than it being an additional duty of other people. I would also adjust your processes to compensate for lead times. Things that you know are going to take a while, go ahead and get ahead of the curve. Order the windshields, tires, other items that aren't quickly shipped at trade walk, write-up, or inspection. Get ahead of that stuff. If you have a standardized process, you know when is the right time to do that. Find out what the lead time is and backwards plan. Keep the standardization the same for everyone. Whatever you do, do it the same way every single time. That way people can catch deviations from that standard or problems much faster, and everyone gets used to that. Something as simple as sending in an approval the same way every single time is going to help. It's going to create a shorthand between sales and reconditioning rather than having a handwritten note this time, a picture of an RO that time, or just a phone call the next. If you standardize it, you can get it much more efficient and everyone will understand, like I said, the shorthand and the communication will be much faster.
All right. So for those of you that joined us for our last webinar, I jumped into this pretty deep, but I did want to bring it back up and highlight it a little bit. And this is a concept for internalizing your internal reconditioning, or internalizing your cosmetic reconditioning. And the concept here is that you're able to actually frontline ready that vehicle when it comes out of the reconditioning process. Too often we see dealers rush the vehicle through service, count that as the reconditioning process, frontline the car, and it's really not, what we call, or what I like to call, sensory ready, right? Sensory ready is when you can take somebody's wife who might be extremely picky, or a gentleman that might be extremely picky, and walk them around the car. And you're not going to see dents. You're not going to see dings. You're not going to get in the car and smell cats or cigarettes or bad odors. And you're not going to see burns in the seat. By internalizing the cosmetic recondition, you can get it all done at once, because when you're relying on those vendors to come in once a week or once or twice a week, it's just not efficient to think that we're going to get all that stuff done in one day. It's not realistic to think we're going to do it. There are companies out there that you can send your current staff to that will train them. In this business model, in the dealership that this came out of, they sent one single technician out. Cost them, I think, right around 10 grand to have him trained. It included his airfare, his training, his lodging. Also included all the tools for PDR, interior repair, windshield chip repair. And according to the source, that they had returned on their investment in about 120 days. And that was a dealership that was doing a little over 100 cars a month. So it wasn't a huge volume, but the idea was they took that one technician and cross-trained him across all these cosmetic platforms, and were able to get that stuff done relatively quickly, rather than waiting for one vendor here and one vendor there to arrive. Anthony, you want to touch base on this one?
So the next part I wanted to show you guys is how you can standardize a process. And one of the ideas was variable detailing. So instead of having just a generic write-up on a vehicle and what needs to be done cosmetically, have a standard set aside and fill it out on paper. So this is an example of a cosmetic inspection form. So this was created in triplicate. So you have with carbon copies. And during the MPI, we had technicians use this as part of the inspection. And you'll notice that there's different stages for exterior and interior. And what that does is it standardized what action is actually going to take place by the detailer and what's going to be charged to the sales department. For example, stage one is something simple as on the outside, clean and clay and polish. Well, then you escalate a little bit. Now stage two, you're buffing. Escalate further. Stage three, now it's a wet sand. Same thing on the inside, interior. The basic one would be clean and vacuum, maybe some dressing. Two would be the steaming and the stain removal for something more aggressive. And three is the ultimate, that's where you've got your dog hair and you've got your beach sand everywhere, or very aggressive stains. So what you do is you triage that as part of the MPI, and then you just mark off what it is. And then eventually the detailers would get that carbon copy and they would actually see, okay, I've got a stage one on the outside, stage two on the inside. You can match up the stage with flat rate hours. So that detailer now knows he's going to be paid 3 flat rate hours for that vehicle, because he sees the severity of what's going on with the vehicle. He knows what tools to grab from a supply gauge or his supply cart, and he's already prepared for it. He can even plan for his day. For example, you're approaching the 5 o'clock hour, 8 o'clock hour, whatnot, when most of the shift is leaving, but there's a couple hours left. Well, you're not going to hand out a car that's a 3-3. It's a 6-hour car, but maybe you can, sift through the pile and find, oh, this is a quick 1-1. You can knock this out before you leave. Well, what you've done is you just fast forwarded that car that would have been pushed off to the next day. So you're able to actually properly dispatch based on what hours of allocation you have left for the day. Helps with sales too, because now they know when they see a copy of this, okay, well, I should have been charged for 3 hours of labor. So because you standardized with this one document, you've standardized what you're going to charge, how much money you're going to make, and how much money the detailer is going to make. Same thing goes with the sublet. You see in the lower right-hand corner, you can even mark up what needs to be done on sublet. Maybe that's where the third carbon copy comes into play. You hand that to the sublet, and now he knows or she knows exactly what they need to do, and there's no surprises because you even marked it on the car. On the lower left corner there, you even marked on the car what's wrong with the car and where the work needs to be performed at. So, like I said, this one form can bring 2 to 3 different parties together, all speaking the same language, all with the same expectations of sale and cost.
And one point to that I think you made last time, Anthony, was the fact that, like I mentioned earlier, reconditioning actually starts at the appraisal. When you have a standard form like this, you've got the people that are out there appraising the car that can properly UA that trade based on what they see in these categories, and a lot for the additional expense for those those additional items like stage 2 and 3.
Yeah, absolutely. That way there's no surprises, and sales and service both know what they got in for the vehicle well before it's too late. So standardizing your workflow. So just like we did on the last form, you want to standardize as much as you can. So your entire workflow, how stuff goes into the shop and how stuff comes out of the shop. Everything should be in a chronological order. You should always have a start point and an end point. Sometimes you'll have a parent task and child tasks. One thing can't happen without the other. You want to look at your whole workflow and document it. Then you want to take from that workflow the processes. Well, what process do we go through to open up a repair order and dispatch? What process do we go to for the inspection or for the approval or detailing, etc.? Get that on paper, get that formalized. That way you can share it with everyone, because nobody can uphold the standard if you haven't briefed what the standard was. And once you tell everyone, okay, this is my expectation, this is what we should be doing, this is the standard, when people deviate from that, you can either change the standard to make it better, or you can perform corrective action or retraining. And that way you can get everybody back on the same sheet of music. Here's an example. Let's say because you're faster now in the reconditioning process, there's a salesperson that sells a car outside the process. Well, what's the standard for that? Do you have something, a whiteboard, or do you have some sort of announcement that you can let the staff know inside the reconditioning shop, hey, this was sold before we're done reconditioning, let's front load it. If you have something like that pre-planned, you can just go by the numbers and prioritize your work properly and have that case scenario prepared for. Don't be afraid to actually map out the area, literally. Here you can see an example of a Google Maps, and we actually just labeled everything everywhere the car should be parked based on where in the workflow it was. You can see that we have even bed liners there for the new cars, something that was ready for the lot, waiting on detail, mechanical, where the new cars should be dropped off. This is something that we shared actually with a transportation company, and we located the photo prep area to the left of where the new car drop off was. So something like this can really help you out for a couple of reasons. Number one, it helps match up your actual workflow, because I found that many times if you're just tracking something on paper or virtually, it can get disconnected from the physical world. So you want to have benchmarks that track and monitor both physical and virtual tracking. So if you're moving a car from one step to the next on a whiteboard or a digital tracker, make sure it's also being moved physically from one parking area to the next. Number two, it's going to eliminate a lot of non-value add time if someone's walking around looking for something. Too often I've seen mechanics or detailers trying to find their next work, and they're just pressing that key fob and the panic button. Well, now if there's a designated parking area of cars waiting for detail, they can just make a beeline right there because they know where their work's going to be. And the third thing is doing a lot audit. You don't even need to have your tracker out. You can actually see where your bottlenecks are just walking around. If you see a whole bunch of cars overflowing out of the detail parking area, but not a lot going to mechanical, you can pretty much guess right there. Okay, well, maybe I'm overstaffed in techs, but understaffed in detail, or my bottlenecks in detail. How can I reallocate my resources to get that faster? So don't be afraid to actually sit down, map out the physical area. And this can be done the same thing for inside a building too, if you want to. Make it match your workflow, but publish it. Get everybody on the same sheet of paper. You come up with something like this, everyone in your department should get a copy. I would even give a copy to salespeople, because then they'll know if you tell them, hey, that car's going to be detailed, they're not bugging you anymore to find out where literally it's parked. They can just walk right to it because they know exactly where that area is mapped. Not a bad idea to even put physical signs out there. Get a couple metal signs made up, attach it to a fence or a light pole, something to make it obvious on when they're bringing the car up, where to leave it and where to park it. Something this simple can save you so much non-valued time and get multiple departments on the same page.
All right, thank you. Let's flip the screen here. All right, so these are some core reconditioning problems, and this is stuff that we commonly see in stores. It's not uncommon for us to get a phone call, or somebody wants us to look at a system, or even a store that's not on our product. And by the way, it is our business model to reach out and help you. If you want us to look at something, or if you have a question about reconditioning, and you just want to bounce it off of one of us, feel free to reach out. You don't have to buy our product in order to receive support from us. We understand that good business is built on relationships, and we're happy to help you. Worst case scenario, we help the business. So feel free to reach out to us at any time, and at the end of this, we'll have some contact information for you. But here are some of the core reconditioning problems. The blame game. It's always somebody else's fault, and that's really because we don't know what we don't know in dealerships that aren't tracking that stuff tightly. The delay. Why do stores wait until a vehicle is in the service bay to order tires and a windshield when they knew the tires were bald and the windshield was cracked during appraisal? Order that stuff up front when you're doing trade walk. That's the stuff that takes time. Communication. With today's margins, dealerships have fewer people doing more things, which makes them harder to pin down. So you definitely want something that's going to help you with a centralized communication. Shifting priorities and wasting time. It's not uncommon for the approval process to get pushed off because we've got a decision maker like a used car manager or GSM that's responsible for making reconditioning decisions. How much we're going to spend on this car. They're desking deals. They're trying to sell cars, and someone's trying to get approvals from them. So we push the approval off, and what ends up happening? Well, the technician that's not paid to rack and unrack a vehicle ends up waiting for an approval or unracking that vehicle and pushing it outside and pulling another one in. It's a production and a time killer. And then, of course, the profit opportunity. Dealerships will often sublet cosmetic work because it's the way the industry's always done it. We don't see many used car technicians performing windshield chip repair, yet 70% of vehicles that are brought through the reconditioning process have a rock chip in the windshield. And here's the funny part about that. We call the glass company and have them come down, when it's convenient for them. Yet the tools to actually do a rock chip repair, you can get a complete kit ready to go for $300 to $500, depending on how much product you need. So that's pretty cheap, because I guarantee you, in that technician's toolbox, there is there's a $400 torque wrench in there. There should be a $300 or a $500 windshield chip repair kit in there as well. So. All right. Anthony, I think this one's you, right?
So core problem solutions. One of the advantages of the company that Anthony and I work for is we're comprised mainly of people from the car business. So from reconditioning management, body shop management, with controller, dealer principal, IT. And one of the advantages of that is we all have our own different best practices and what we've seen from our old stores and competitors, and now even a new viewpoint with our customers. So we've come up with the best solutions that, among all of us, our experience, we've seen for these problems. First one is digital tracking and communication solutions. So you got to have some type of tracking that anybody can access. So I would steer away from, just a whiteboard or big piece of paper or something like that. because what's the point if not everybody can access it? You don't want to have somebody leave their building or leave their desk to come over and see something that may not even been updated properly. So you want some type of digital tracker, whether that's like a cloud-based solution or software like Rapid Recon. And you want, if you're already doing that, you need to take the next step for the communication tool. So, snail mail is obsolete. Same thing with communication between departments. Don't have that handwritten RO waiting on someone's desk. Find a way to incorporate it into an email or text message, a chat alert, some type of desktop notification. You want that instant communication, because if you're waiting on someone to look at something handwritten or a stack on someone's desk, it's just going to get covered by something else, and then your priorities are all out. You want to manage your non-value added time. So non-value added time is the time it takes you to do something that you really can't pass off to the sale, can't pass off to the customer. You can justify repairing a car, customer should pay for that, or the selling of the car, or any of that. But the wait time, waiting for an approval or waiting for someone to get dispatched to their work, that's not cost that you can pass on. So that's non-value added. It's straight cost to you. And anytime you can minimize that in between the task time, that's where you're going to start to really cut down on your average days in Recon and then your time to line, because first you're going to trim that fat. That's the low-hanging fruit. So if it takes a day for you to get an approval from service to sales, or from sales to service to find out that they got that approval, you eliminate that. That's the easiest thing you can do right then. You haven't increased the productivity of any person per se, but you've already reduced the waste and the time in between. And now maybe that's part of that 2.5 days you want to cut off to increase your inventory turn. Good, better, best parts options for shipping. So when you're giving an estimate to the sales department, give them different options for parts. Don't just throw one blanket price down. Maybe give them an option for this a certified OEM option. Give them an option for what can arrive the quickest, and give them an option for what's the best quality. And don't be afraid to accept a higher shipping cost to get it here sooner. You got to keep sight of the fact that you may have spent $50 more in shipping to get it here the same day, but you're making that up in your holding costs. Now you're getting it to the lot faster. The technician's getting to it faster. God forbid it's not waiting from a Friday to a Monday. Now you've just added 3 days of that car being on property when you could have got it the part there and had everything done wrapped up by that Friday. So adding shipping costs to make the parts price higher is not always going to hurt the bottom line, especially if you can reduce your holding costs and get it ready for that weekend. Dedicated approval process. I touched on this a little bit earlier, but always have it the same way. If a used car manager is getting his estimates the same, they all look the same and they come in the same manner, he's going to get muscle memory. He's going to just learn how to attack it fast. If he's having to go through different written ROs, or if he or she's having to log into different websites, or going to Google one time and then Microsoft the other time, and maybe John Doe calls them with the estimate, all you're doing is introducing different variables that can add more time. Keep it the same way, standardize it every single time, and you're going to notice it's going to be a lot quicker. In the military, we used to have a phrase called slow is smooth and smooth is fast. And the idea being, if you have it the same way standardized, you're not going to have mistakes, which in the long run become faster. Internalized cosmetic recon. If you have the resources on site, you really should push hard for that. I know you might save $1 or $2 going off site and doing something sublet or finding a body shop down the road that'd be cheaper. But think of the long run. Number one, it could take you longer. Number two, you're gonna have resources. Now you got to grab porters and send it down the street, and you got to call and hope that another service advisor is keeping you up to date. It's just much easier. Even if it costs a little bit more, keep it in-house. Number one, you're keeping the money in-house, so the dealer's going to be happy about that. And number two, you have more accountability and control over it. And you may end up being faster in-house, which would make up for the extra price you might have to pay. Again, just like the parts. Dedicated internal staff. I touched on a lot last time. And it's imperative that you have somebody committed to the internal process, someone that you can always go to, because if that used car desk has the same person that they can deal with each time, They're going to develop their own shorthand. They're going to develop their own relationship, and soon that dedicated internal writer is going to understand and predict what that used car manager is going to approve or not. And that's big and important to them. And once you have that trust, you become a lot faster, because you don't want to have to reinspect every single car or send every car to the used car manager for them to just look over again because there was a lack of trust. The chaser. So the chaser is a very important job. The chaser is a liaison between the sales department and the reconditioning department. They're the ones that's solely responsible for pushing the cars through. Although they work with reconditioning, they actually report and answer to the sales department. The benefits for both sides. Number one, the benefit for the sales department is they have someone there that has eyes on, that can act and make decisions on their behalf. Helps out the reconditioning department. Number two is that they have someone that can give them some immediate decisions, rather than having to waste that time and that non-valued time of finding the porter and getting that car over to the used car director. Now the chaser can walk down and act on behalf of. And the chaser can also help the reconditioning department by solving mysteries on where cars are. This car was just traded in, but nobody knows where the keys. That chaser's the one that's going to go find the keys, go get the trade in information from the salesperson that took it in, etc. Very valuable position, usually recruited from like a senior porter type. Trying to low entry management position. So usually a head porter or maybe a service writer will cross over and do something like that. And then last, I want to talk about pay plans tied to the average days in Recon. If you have a dedicated staff, it's easy to do this, because if you're going to motivate them to be fast, I would switch them from gross to time. Come up with like 3 tiers. If they get their work done under 7 days, they get this, 5 days this, 3 days that. If you spiff them or make it part of the compensation plan, you're going to see how fast they're actually interested in getting these cars through the shop fast, and how now their attention is to eliminating the waste. Otherwise, they may still be distracted by their own by like customer pay or some other type of income.
And guys, too, if you want to reach out and look at some optional pay plans that are tied to ADR, Keith Bryce, who is on our team as well, he was a fixed operations director in a store for years, and prior to that, he was a comptroller. So he's our money guy, and he's got some nice plans, tucked away in a file somewhere, and can give you some examples that either you could use or build on. So feel free to reach out to him. I'm sure he'd be happy to share that information with you. Right, flip screens here. All right, so let's talk a little bit about informing the key people at key times. Keeping reconditioning production information up to date in real time for the sales staff can actually be done. It's important to remember that with this business model, and what I mean by that is the business model where you're getting your photos and all your e-commerce information, your descriptions up within 24 hours of acquiring that vehicle. With that business model, you're going to be selling these vehicles while they're being repaired. Meaning they're going to be for sale while they're in the repair process. So let's talk a little bit about that and how we can notify people. We put together some examples on on how this is typically done in stores. So I'm going to let Anthony take this slide and explain this a little bit.
So the first one here is it's a good solution, but it's probably actually the most popular across all the dealerships that we've worked with. Is usually your DMS or inventory feed will have an option to print off a current make ready list. And usually it's from when you're changing the status in your DMS or inventory feed from ready to make ready, or frontline ready, something like that. And this is something that the desk will either print in bulk for salespeople to walk by and grab, or something they may hand out in a morning meeting. So it's a good form of communication. It lets the salespeople know where the statuses are on the cars and hopefully where to expect them to be parked. But it's a one-time, one-way piece of information. This is why we've kind of only categorized it as good. It's an initial reference that is only updated once a day.
Yeah, it's only as good as the time it was updated, right?
Yes, exactly.
The next one, and on that same good level, is the whiteboard. Now, this is actually a photo that I took out of a store that we launched back east. And when I went in there to put Rapid Recon in, I walked in and I saw this whiteboard, and I saw this awesome lady, Tina. She had the highest energy level out of anybody I'd ever seen. And she was solely responsible for keeping all of this updated. These are all of their vehicles that are currently in the reconditioning process in this store prior to them actually going to a digital solution. I couldn't imagine trying to keep this up to date all the time. And if you called in sick, I mean, you'd have to start from scratch, I think, if you missed a day. So effective if somebody's there to do it all the time, but certainly not if you've got to keep updating it and you're not around.
So this next one, the daily production meeting. So just like the make ready list, it's only updated once. It's only as good as the information at that time you're having the meeting. But the advantage this has over the list is it's two ways. So this is a good opportunity for you to get feedback and give feedback. So hopefully you'd have maybe a shop foreman or team leader in this environment. They can give you some feedback from the mechanical side on any issues that they're having. I highly recommend, if your dealership is using the chaser, to get the chaser involved so you can have a representative from sales. Maybe even once a week, have the used car manager themselves sit in on this meeting so that they can give off some of their issues. And what you'll find from these type of meetings is a restructuring of a prioritization, because once you get everyone together, then you realize, okay, this is the age unit. We got to get this out. Okay, this car is going to sit for a while waiting for a recall, so we might as well move this other car up. So this type of meeting is really great to get a collaborative effort on what you should prioritize for that day.
All right. And then the ultimate solution, the best solution, obviously, is a real-time digital solution. This is a screenshot from our product here. And what you're looking at is a customizable workflow off to the left-hand side of the screen. And then we've selected the one vehicle there that was in the detail department. But this is real-time and it's accessible from anywhere. And so when Anthony's talking about a real-time digital solution, you need something that everybody can access and then update in real time. Circling back to that meeting that we saw earlier in the last slide, that's a daily production meeting. Stores that are doing extremely well, even with a real-time digital solution, they'll still meet weekly, not just, not every day, but weekly, really for 10 to maybe 15 minutes to discuss what's working and what isn't. Even if you're not a Rapid Recon user, it's still a good idea to do that. Don't use those meetings for reinventing the wheel, but get the team together to talk about areas of opportunity and things that you can tackle. It helps to have some buy-in from the frontline people, the technicians and service writers as well. So it's good to huddle up a little bit there and and tackle your opportunities. So, all right, we're just about wrapped up here, guys, and we can open this up to questions. Some solutions for keeping the key people informed. Let's see, my screen did not flip the way I wanted it to. There we go. So making your 5-day benchmark. Let's flip that over one more. There we go. Sorry about that, you guys. So plan, measure, and manage. I don't normally read slides verbatim because I can't stand it when people do it to me, but I am going to read this because it's so powerful. Implementing a time to market policy before it's sustainable will result in missed turns and ammunition for the naysayers related to why we shouldn't have done this in the first place. If you go to market in 24 hours from acquisition and you don't have your reconditioning in line first, you will fail. I've seen it so many times in almost the 2 years that I've been with Rapid Recon. Do not put the cart ahead of the horse in this. Get the horse out front, then get your time to market stuff lined out. Once you've got your reconditioning under control, you will succeed if you do it. If you do it in reverse, you're destined to fail there. Just make sure that you've got a measurable, constant, measurable, consistent time to line average that reflects your marketing strategy before you implement that 24-hour market policies there. So, and then lastly, be prepared to sell a vehicle that's in production. When you go to that business model, even if all of your reconditioning is in line, you're still going to end up selling a car that's being worked on. It's going to happen. It's inevitable. So, be able to train your staff to work around that a little bit. It's helpful if they can see what's been done and what still needs to be done when they're selling that car, so that they can communicate to the customer that, hey, look, as it is right now, this is the price on the car and this is what's been done to it. If you want the rest of this work done, here's how much it's going to be, and it's going to add to the price of the car. So you don't end up selling something and then thinking that you got your pricing right when you actually don't, because your repair order is still open. Make sure that they're selling around that so that your customers are being charged accordingly. You're not just taking all that out of gross in order just to turn some iron. So that is our presentation for today. I'd like to open that up to questions. And Brian, I don't know if you've got an arsenal of questions there or not, but we'll be happy to take anything that you've got.
Yes, we do. Hey, everybody, this is Brian again with Auto Success. Some of you have already put in questions. For those of you who haven't, please go ahead and start typing them in right now. If you're not familiar with the way to ask the questions, you just click on questions on your GoToWebinar bar, and it'll give you a place to type in the question. If you're not on a laptop or a desktop, if you're on a smartphone, there's either a header, a footer, or a picture frame that goes all the way around the screen. And there's a question mark somewhere on there. Tap that, and you can ask a question. But while everybody's typing in their questions, let's jump on the ones that came in during the presentation. Don't you waste a lot of money on detailing trade cars you won't keep? What percentage do you see?
Interesting question. On the percentage, I'd probably have to get back to you on that. But here's what I commonly hear: the vehicles, if they actually are wholesaled, they're actually bringing more money at wholesale. The dealerships that are detailing those vehicles up front are recouping those costs plus some by at least going to the wholesale market with the clean unit.
Yeah, I had the same experience. The auctions that we used, we had to pay them to clean up the vehicle if we chose to have it cleaned up. Obviously, you want to clean for the auction, but what we spent on internal labor was much cheaper. So even if it was going to go wholesale instead of retail, we still saved money and added value to the vehicle by cleaning it.
Well, those are both good answers. I was not expecting that answer to that question. Let's move on to the second question. Can you share with us the vendor name that trained the technician on the cosmetic repairs?
Yeah, give me 1 second. I have it here in my office, so give me 1 second. I'll grab it for you.
Okay. Well, I guess we can move on to the next question. The next question is, when buying vehicles online or at the auction, I know for sure some units will need tires. This would be a good time to order tires even before the unit leaves the auction. Do you guys disagree with that or agree with that?
I agree with that. I think that's also to the point we were trying to make earlier in the presentation on know your lead times. So if you know waiting on tires is a time for that is a non-value time that you're waiting for a while, and you know it's going to need tires, and everyone's on the same page, absolutely do that. That'd be good for windshield or any type of vendor that it takes a while to get the product. As long as the sales department's on the same page and everyone understands, a lot of dealerships have an allowance of some sort of what you can order based on what happens a lot. What's very often the same type of repair. You may want to back it up with some photos. One of the features of our program is you can actually take photos and upload it and show the used car desk from wherever you are. That would be a good application of that. Take a photo and obviously get the permission right then and there at the auction. Go ahead and order tires.
So, Brian, I do have the answer for you. There are actually two companies that I have in the arsenal here. Now, I have no connections to these companies whatsoever. One of them I personally used. Believe it or not, that business model was mine that I used in the collision center that I was in when we internalized our reconditioning. And the other one was referred to me. But the first one is called the Ding King. I think they're got quite a few locations across the U.S. That's the one I actually used. And the thing that I really liked about them is they had a retrain guarantee. So if my technician quit within, I think it was 5 years, don't hold me to it, that they would actually retrain the next technician. And the only thing I would be responsible for would be airfare and lodging. Now, that did actually happen to me. And I think it's everybody's biggest concern. Well, I'm going to train this guy up, and then he's just going to run out and do his own gig, and then I'm stuck holding the bill. It was really nice to have that to fall back on. The particular technician that I had actually retired. He was a sculptor, believe it or not, and he did used car reconditioning as a supplement to that, because there's not a lot of money in sculpting unless you are, that's neither here nor there. But he did end up retiring, and his predecessor that had been shadowing him for a while, I put him on a plane, threw him out to California for 2 weeks. And they did retrain him, and I think my total expense was somewhere around $3,000. So it was a lot less than reinvesting that $10,000. And then the other one, the other company I believe is called oh my gosh, I forgot it, but I will write it down. And before we wrap up, I will get it for you. It was right on the tip of my tongue. So next question.
Okay. This one came up on the mapping screen when you were showing the map of the dealership with the different lot areas. And the question is, what if the lot is crowded and we are filling every spot?
I would recommend an overflow area, just so it, to understand the question more. So you don't have room for all of the work, or certain sections may not have room.
You know what? I kind of got the feeling from it that it would be like, you know, if you've got six or, you know, however many, 5 different boxes where the cars move through, you would have to have open spots in all of those boxes. And, you know, some
Right.
dealerships, there's not, I mean, there's 3 open spots and they say customer parking. You know what I mean?
Right. So what I would do is I'd have the 2 sections and then have kind of a bleed through. So I'd have, if there were 10 spots, let's say, I'd have 4 on the one end, 4 on the other end, and then the remaining 2 can be kind of bleed over for wherever goes, whichever section has the overflow. And there were many times that I did have, for example, half of my detail spots were taken by mechanic spots just because I didn't have enough room. So you still have a general direction of where you're going to go. You know, by the time you get to the actual location of where the parking is, by then you're close enough that, you know, by looking at the repair order or whatever paper you have that you're looking for the vehicle, you can see the make and model. I would definitely plan for overflow though. So again, if you have a set amount of spots, don't divide it up specifically 5 and 5, maybe 3 and 3, and then have like 4 between the 2 that can go either way.
All right.
All
Anyway,
right, good.
back to that last.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Sorry, Brian. The name of the other company, if you guys want to jot it down, is called Right Look, and they are, I believe they're out of California.
Okay.
They'll do that some training.
Also, just one follow-up comment on that last question is I highly recommend too, whether it's a week or a month, but you're going to want to audit that parking and you're going to want to refresh. So you may want to have like a little lot moving party at the end of the month or at the end of the week, and then just so that you may grab a porter or a couple of details, somebody that can just help you move all the cars. That's a good opportunity because if you let it go without managing it, everything's going to be parked somewhere it shouldn't belong. So you gotta have frequent audits.
All right. Well, for right now, it looks like that's all of our questions. Everybody on the webinar, if you have another question you would like our presenters to address, please type it in quickly. I'd like to thank Anthony and Anthony for taking the time to join us today. My name's Brian Ankney. You will get an email from me thanking you for attending this webinar. And so if there's any feedback you would like to give, or if you would like to suggest a topic or a guest, or request a recording of the webinar, you know, feel free, if you're driving right now or you don't have a pen, you know, you can go ahead and request that directly to me. And also, if there's somebody else in the dealership that you feel could benefit from this, maybe you took great notes, but there's some other people you would like to share this with, please, you know, respond to me or reach out to Anthony or Anthony, and we will get you a recording of this webinar. And then the last thing I would like to say is thank you for taking your time to join us today. And if you liked what you saw, please come back again and spread the word. You know, tell other people in the dealership. We cover topics from every aspect of the dealership. And so maybe this isn't that interesting to your salespeople, but we do have topics that would be. Maybe this isn't that interesting to your technicians, but we do have topics that would be. Or maybe this isn't so interesting to whoever, but we cover all kinds of topics. Anthony and Anthony, is there anything that you would like to share with our audience today before we let them go?
I think I'm good. Anthony, do you have anything?
No, just thank you guys for attending, and thank you, Brian, for hosting.
Well, we certainly should give them, you know, the ability to reach out. So, I mean, if you want, go ahead and email us at Anthony@rapidrecon.com or Anthony Martinez at rapidrecon.com. We'd be happy to look at anything that might be reconditioning related, even if you're not looking at our product. We would like for you to look at it, but if not, we'd still be happy to look at that for you.
And we can always set up a live demonstration of live systems in other dealerships so you can see how our product is working for them.
Fantastic. Well, thanks, guys. Everybody, have a wonderful afternoon. I hope to see you again on a future Auto Success webinar.
Thank you.
Thank you.